It is now 5:30. I'd like to call the Public Facility Corporation Board of Directors meeting to order. Let the records reflect that we have all board members present. We go to item number 3, recommend approving the agenda of the Board of Directors meeting of February the 1st, 2011, with any corrections or deletions. Mr. Springston,
As is stated, ma'am.
I have a motion. Motion by Mr. Aguilar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Colunga. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. We now go to item number 4, recommend approving the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting of October the 19th, 2010, with any corrections or deletions. Mr. Springston.
Ma'am, is only as stated in general function, recommend approval of the following items. Number 1.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Colunga. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Aguilar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Because I was not here on October 19th. We have 2 abstain and 5 yes. Now we go to item number, that's it? Okay, so it's, okay. We now switch to, do I need a motion? I need a motion to adjourn the Board of Directors meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Second. Motion by Ms. Peña, second by Dr. Saavedra. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
What time? 5:30?
It is now 5:31.
That was good.
We now go to the, we have to stop. So it's 5:35, we automatically go into it. Board of Directors meeting is adjourned. We'll wait for a few minutes for 5:35 for the regular board meeting.
We were to put it down for 10 minutes. I'm glad we didn't.
What do we do for 5 minutes?
We got 2 minutes.
2 minutes left. It is now 5:35. I'd like to call the regular board meeting to order. Let us all stand for a moment of silence. And I ask everyone to please keep Lydia Irene Gonzalez Salcillo, who was a former teacher with our school district, keep her family in our prayers. Ms. Longoria, could you please lead us to the pledge? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. We're now in item number 4. Let the records reflect all board members are present at this meeting. Item number 5, recommend approving the agenda of the regular board meeting of February the 1st, 2011, with any corrections or deletions. Mr. Springston,
As stated, ma'am.
do I have a motion?
President, was there going to be a change in the order today, or do we do that
I believe
now?
we're going to change item number 9 will be right after the board calendar.
Item
9, under consent agenda.
Okay.
Item number 9 to be moved right after board
Before-
calendar.
Before public audiences?
Before public audience, yes.
I do have 1-page replacement.
And you have 1-page replacement. Which item is that, sir?
Under general function, item 7, page 58 will be replaced with 58A.
I have a motion. Motion by Ms.
Move to approve.
Longoria. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Peña. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 6, recommend approving the minutes of the regular board meeting of October the 19th, 2010, with any corrections. Also, we have 2 board members on board that were not in existence during that time, so we'll have 2 board members that will not be voting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Colunga, second by Ms. Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5 and 2 abstain. Recommend approving the consent agenda. The board has agreed to discuss the following items. All of the items below that are not called out will be approved by consent. And my colleagues have agreed to discuss the following items. Under consent agenda, under A, 8 will be discussed. 9. Under B, recommendation of approval of following payments. Item number 10. Number 12. Under recommend approval of the following contracts agreements, item number 16. Under E, item number 18, 19, and 23. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Ms. Peña. Do I have a second? Second by Dr. Saavedra. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Now we go to item number 8, Superintendent's Reports. Conference presentation. Number 1, presentation of 2009-2010 Preliminary Academic Excellence Indicator System, AEIS District of Campus Report. Mr. Springston.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I want to call on Ms. Bertha Pena, and our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, to give us the news and the details.
Thank you, Mr. Springston. Mrs. Presas Garcia, members of the board, at this time I would ask Raul Vasquez to give our annual AEIS report.
Madam President, Mr. Superintendent, board members, you all received a diskette. It's the same thing that we're going to discuss this. It's been advertised on the paper. This is our public audience presentation on the AIS report. On page 2 of the report, as you can see there, it is a breakdown of our ratings for our schools for this past year. We see that our district is a recognized school district, and you have all the campuses there for the last 3 years as to what their ratings have been, well, more than 3 years as to what their ratings have been. On the next item, you have your campus rating. It gives you a total of how many fell in what category for this past year, and is divided both by elementary, middle school, and high school. On page 3, you have a report that shows all the campuses with the enrollment counts as to how many campuses we have with the different type of enrollments in the district. The next thing, it talks to you about how many campuses we have in this district in relation to how many are secondary, middle school, and elementary. And of course, you have your alternative settings in there too. On page 4 is the student by ethnicity and economic status. So there you have the number of students, the percentage for the year, and for the last 2 years, and if any changes that we might have had in the last 2 years. And then you also have your economically disadvantaged and your limited English proficiency, and you have the changes that have occurred there. And then you have students by grade span. It shows that we've increased in some areas and we've decreased in some areas. Not a lot, but it does play a significant part in a sense. And then you have students by program. In other words, how many students we have in all the special programs that we have in this district. It is broken down. On page 5, you have a breakdown of the tax met standard accountability indicators by the subjects that were tested, but it also gives you a breakdown in comparison as to how BISD did in comparison to the region and to the state. Then you also have a breakdown by all grades tested accountability indicators by special groups. And there, again, male, female, special ed, LEP, and at risk. And you have there, again, a comparison as to how we did from the district to the region and the state. And then the next one is a participation rate. And there you have all the number of students and the number percentages of students that took the tax accommodated, tax AM, and tax alt grades 3 through 11. The next one is the participation rate by comparing us from the district to the state to the region. That is a comparison there. On page 6, you have your graduating class of 2009. The graduating class always falls 1 year behind any reporting period. That's the way the state has already set it up. And then you have your graduation type. In other words, the different graduations methods that we have in the district to graduate our students. And then the Texas Higher Education Readiness Component and Reading, ELA, Math, it gives you their, the percentages that we have. The last one there that's there is for college admission results for the class of 2009. There they take into account the SAT, the ACT, and they give you a breakdown and compare us, again, to the region and to the state. On page 7, we have our attendance rate, we have our completion rate status for the class of 2009, and then you have your dropout rate by ethnicity grades 7 through 8. So you have 7 through 8, looks at the whole district for complete dropout rate. The other one is your completion rate for the high schools. And again, here, they're comparing us, they're always starting to compare us now with the region and the state as to how we're doing. On your next page, on page 8, you have a breakdown of the district staff by category. So you have from your campus administrators, central office administrators, paraprofessional staff, and so on and so on. So you know exactly what the total employment for the district is. And the total employment for this district is 7,543 individuals. Then the teacher profile basically gives you full-time percentages by gender and ethnicity. And then the next one is your teacher's highest grade held. There it tells you how many we have in the different categories that are there by that breakdown. The next page, on page 9, is the big pie. In other words, this was your budget from last year. This is how much came from local, how much came from state, how much came from federal, and other sources. And then you have like a pie that shows you how much came from each area that is there. On page 10, it gives you a further breakdown as your budget from last year. There it tells you exactly where your monies went to. And this is the information that we send to the state, and this is how it's broken down. As you can see, the total expenditure per pupil in this district is $12,214 dollars. Operational expenses per is $9,127. We spend a lot of, we do put a lot of money into our students in this district, as you can see there. The next one, and it's kind of small, and even I'm sure it is small within your own CD, but that one is a disciplinary breakdown by campus, by infraction for the whole year. So that takes, the next page is removal from the regular classroom. Again, here you have a breakdown of all the campuses, and you have the different sections or areas where the student might have been sent to because they were removed from the campus for whatever infraction it might have occurred. The next page is something that we have to put in there. It's a violence procedures and procedures that we have in case there's violence in the camp, all the different things that are in the campuses. And then you have the violence prevention programs that are available in this school district to help our students. The last page is just the board members' names and stuff like that. Are there any questions concerning? Yes, ma'am.
I have one question.
Sure.
How many of the campuses in 2010, in this preliminary report, were recognized and exemplary due to the new measures? And could you explain those to the public, please, using the TPM and the RI? So we have a general
Right.
idea of how many we were talking about compared to without the measures being used.
With TPM, we had 30 campuses that did not need TPM.
Yeah, could you explain what
Okay,
that means?
TPM is a Texas projection measure. In other words, the state of Texas is saying Raul Vasquez might have not passed the test this year, but because of past history, there's a very good chance that he's going to pass next year. So then what the state of Texas has given the campus as a whole on a group of students that are almost meeting the projections, then they're saying there's a very good chance that that's going to happen. So without TPM, we had 30 of our 52 campuses that made it without it. And and the other thing is that you all need to understand is that we don't know if they're going to use TPM this year till April. The decision will be made in April. As of right now, we have no idea. And all the campuses, and also through our superintendent, everybody has been made very aware of the fact that whenever we give out data that is being generated right now, we are calculating everything, whether they're benchmarks or whatever, without TPM. In other words, you're telling the campus, this is how you're going to do. Do not think of TPM because it might not happen. Now, on the required improvement and the other one, there's a larger number of campuses. I don't have that because, see, required improvement and exemptions is something the districts have been getting for years, and they're going to continue getting that in the future. That is nothing that has been said about taking that out. So we're sitting pretty well on that one.
And I'd like to add, Dr. Saavedra, that if a student passed under TPM, in reality, they failed the tax
Exactly.
test. It was the TPM because of the projection, because the student did so well, he went up 10, 20 percentile points the year before. The state is saying, well, he's predicted to pass this year because he made such a large improvement on his tax. Well, the fact of the matter is that principals are faced with the reality that if we got TPM or required improvement, or both, as for the ratings of recognized or exemplary, that we have our homework and our work orders cut out for us.
Yeah, that's one thing I want to make clear to the public, that because we had these measures implemented and included, that's why we came up with the results that we did. Otherwise, we would have gone back down to 30 out of 52, is that?
Well, 30 out of 52 made it without TPM.
Without.
Right, so, and then the other thing, Sarah, is that all the campuses are very well aware of where they ranked, because we've made that very clear to them and we work with them. So they're working directly with what they have and hoping to get better improvements and not depending
Right.
on the extras.
And
But-
board members, I'd like to also add that at the very beginning of the school year, I think the district wanted to celebrate. I mean, it is a great feeling for a campus to be recognized or exemplary because they're not taking anything away from the hard work that the students and the teachers have made in that campus. We wanted to celebrate. We want to celebrate. But a week after that, everybody rolled up their sleeves and got to
Still
work
have our
because
hard
the
work,
reality
yeah.
was there.
One question.
Any other questions?
Yes, Raul, of course, public needs to understand it's not only Brownsville, it was across the state.
Yes, sir.
So the neighboring, Los Fresno and some of these that were recognized also follow the same criteria, so it's not only Brownsville, right?
Yes, sir. This criteria is followed by every school district in the state of Texas, and I can assure you that every school district in the state of Texas is sitting there waiting to April come around to see if they're going to allow us to use that or not. And of course, there's other factors that come into play next year. Remember, your ratings for math and reading are going to go up.
The
scales
standards are
gonna be
going up every year.
You're going to have commended next year. We're going to have ELL
Help us
next year.
60%. They have to reach even more standards. They have to have 60% in their TELPAs. We're looking at commended scores. And we're also looking, every data that comes out of Raul's office to the schools is broken into groups because we need to know where those populations are so that we can improve in that as well.
And I guess when we do the curriculum meeting, I'm not gonna take too much of the time, but when we do, we'll look at the benchmarks and see where we're at with that and how we're doing. I mean, we're projecting okay with that?
Yes, ma'am, we have a lot of data for you.
Okay, thank you.
We do.
Yes, ma'am.
And one last comment.
Sure.
Our school district is recognized without TPM.
Right.
I want to make that very clear. They have absolute standards. That mean our school district made recognized. And in fact, we would have been exemplary except for our graduation rates. Our completion rates were short of 95%. But at the campus level, we have broken it down to each campus, how they became recognized or exemplary, and cautioning about the TPM and the required improvement.
In closing, I just want to make it very clear that Ms. Brown will now receive a CD that will be put on the website. And the public is, if they want to come and get a copy of it, they can either go to my office and we'll burn them a copy, or they can go through the Public Information Office and they can burn a copy and keep it and work with it. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Question? Okay. We now go to item number 2, presentation of 2011-2012 budget calendar.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Mr. Fuller, at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Springston. Ms. Garcia, members of the board. On page 32 is the budget calendar as we presented at the January 12th Budget Committee meeting. Oh, page 34, I'm sorry. At the January 12th Budget Committee meeting. It outlines various dates for the public, for the community, for the district personnel, staff personnel, administrators, of deadlines of what we're going to be expecting at certain times. Also, it has tentative budget committee meetings, and you can see we have approximately two a month until we adopt the budget in June.
You'll be meeting with the campuses scheduled? Are you going to be meeting with the principals, or how are you going to, is it going to be on a one-to-one? Is it going to be all together and discussing everybody's budget, or how are you going to be doing
In the
it?
past, we've met by the clusters, by high school in various clusters, and we meet with the elementary schools. And then if they need more explanation or more help, anything they need extra, then we will meet with them individually.
And the report that goes out to the campus administrators for them to start plugging in their numbers into the budget, when does that go out? Does it go out in February?
Yes, it'll be, after our February 17th meeting, we'll be looking at 3 scenarios. From there, hopefully we'll determine to what level. Let's say we go for a 1% cut, we'll know what each department will be expecting as an allocation. Once we know that, they'll be sent out a budget proposal worksheet, and they know what numbers to work with.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Saavedra.
And I'm just trying to understand on the budget, when we had the budget meeting, we were going to come up with 3 proposed budgets, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When do we anticipate that happening? If we're going to wait until finalizing in June, that's kind of a little late, no?
Well, our next committee meeting is on February the 17th. Again, these are
Yeah.
just for purposes of example of when we plan on meeting, but they can be changed, and this one is on February 17th, and that's when we'll be coming with 3 various proposals, as we talked about last week.
Yeah, because as the principals or administrators receive these proposed budgets, that will also help and guide them to work with their budgets.
Yes.
Okay.
May I add, Madam President, that
Go ahead.
same thing with us as a district, since our budget calendar begins on July 1, and we know that the legislation is also going to be convening or maybe going into special sessions at that time. That puts us in that same predicament as
Right.
some of the high schools. And so we may have to go back and look at some of those after the legislation meets.
Right.
Any further questions from any of the board members?
Mr. Springston or Mr. Fuller, have you had any budget meetings with your campuses? Because I noticed some of these committee meetings scheduled January the 12th.
Have we had any
and
meetings with the
and
campuses?
the 26th, yeah, because school board budget committee meeting. Or
That's with the board,
the budget committee, okay.
the school board
The
budget committee,
Okay,
like we had last Wednesday, that type of committee meeting.
but you have not met with
Not
any of
with
the
the
campuses?
camp, no. We haven't given the
Okay.
worksheets out.
Individually, they have come in, they've discussed with the different departments and personnel. So, yes, informally, they have had discussions to try to get prepared of the personnel units, or what do you see for, we call it supply money. But formally, as a group, no, we have not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we now go to item number 3, presentation of notification
Thank you,
Oh.
Mr. Fuller.
of allowance contingency fund change order.
Any questions from
Any
the board members?
questions? No. Move along to standing board agenda items, board calendars. Mr. Springston?
Thank you, Madam President. As we look at February the 1st, what a change today in the weather. All I want to state about that is that it is going to be quite chilly in the morning, so make sure we bundle up. I think somewhere lows down into the upper 20s to the lower 30s. I told Mr. Chirinos this morning to make sure that our buses were cranked up and warm to receive our children and get them into the schools and get them fed and keep them warm in school, and let's teach our kids. We are going to be monitoring the weather. I won't use that announcement late because some people probably won't be watching it if we are a little bit later. That we are monitoring the weather as it goes through Wednesday and Thursday. As of right now, it looks like our worst scenario with weather is going to be sometime Thursday night, Friday morning. Looking some possible snow, sleet. I know our kids are probably jumping up and down because they haven't seen that in quite a while. But we are going to monitor the situation and keep the board and keep the community updated. So make sure that you stay with Channel 17 and pay attention to our websites. And Ms. Brown will also notify the media. And we will be meeting tomorrow again with the National Weather Service to look at the projected model for Thursday and Friday, and we'll be making decisions accordingly. Also, just as a reminder that we are making sure that our campuses are well aware of what's going on, that we're keeping our water and our heaters and all those types of things at a certain temperature and running them 24/7 so that we can actually make sure that these things don't freeze, any pipes bust, anything like that. We've already sent our memos and already been in contact with all campus staff and directors to make sure we're taking care of our buildings.
Buses will be fully filled tonight, right?
Yes, they are already fully filled. We do have a curriculum committee meeting coming up on Thursday at 5:30. I will say that right now we are still looking at having our Madrigal dinner, public performance at 7 o'clock because the weather looks like it's going to be getting better Friday afternoon. Right now, the projection is that by noontime, the precipitation would be gone, and it should be getting up into the upper 40s and maybe the lower 50s. The only problem is that they might not get to practice as much as they wanted to before they have this Madrigal dinner, but the kids do a great job. Our BISD Middle School Science Fair is on the 5th. Next week is National School Counselors Week. I want to make sure you say thank you to your counselors because we know they do
Thank you, counselors.
They do a great job, and they work very hard at what they do. Texas Music Educators Association All-State Convention is on the 9th. Cool Food for Cool Schools is also at the Brownsville Event Center, 5:30 to 8 on the 10th, which is Thursday. We have our Spelling Bee at Falk Middle School on the 12th. We have our DEIC meeting coming up 5:30 to 7:30 on Valentine's Day, the 14th. I want to make sure we mention Valentine's Day. And our next board meeting is scheduled for the 15th, and that's it.
Any questions from the board members? We now move to item number 9, from the consent agenda. Information, discussion, possible action referencing the lease revenue qualified school construction bonds, Series 2010A, 2010B, 2010C, and 2010E. Presentation made by Estrada Hinojosa, Financial Advisors, and Fulbright and Jaworski Bond Counsel. Mr. Springston, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I'll have Mr. Fuller announce our that are with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Springsteen. Today, from Estrada Hinojosa, we have Mr. Noe Hinojosa. He's passing out the booklets to each board member. And from Fulbright Jaworski, we have Carrie Troell. These two firms have been with the district in the entire process, and they'll give a small presentation to the board.
Good evening, Noe Hinojosa, Estrada Hinojosa and Company. I guess, if anything, we come into you because we had a little change by the TA commissioner in terms of what TEA is going to be willing to fund for the IFA allocation on these revenue bonds that were issued back in December, early December. I think my partner, Larry Jordan, who was here that night, told you then that there was an opportunity for financing. In fact, I put together, or our firm has put together a little booklet that pretty much gives you, in a synthesis, what the project's about. Literally, we financed about $26 million, of which those bonds were issued at a rate of about 5.79 or so. And when you put together the principal amount that was borrowed, coupled with the interest, the payments that are expected to be made by the school district are reflected in that big pie that we have in there, close to $50 million, to be exact, $49.9 million. At the time that we sold the bonds, back on December the 7th, we contemplated, as we had discussed with staff all throughout the year, that the feds will fund a big portion of the interest cost on the bonds, and that the TEA, the Texas Education Agency, through its IFA program, will fund the balance. And they will fund the balance largely due to the fact that whenever a bond is issued by the state, by the school district, the state normally puts into play a formula that is based on the poverty of that given school. So in this case, when you look at the little pie on the left at the bottom, you'll see how we contemplated at the time that 60% will be paid by the state and 40% will be paid by the feds. Well, on January the 6th, we got notice by the TA commissioner through the staff that the BISD needed to amend the original application that had been submitted back on on June 15th of 2010, to basically include in the amendment of this application that BISD will be required to pay, in this case, about $600,000 on an annual basis over the course of the next 18 years, that total up to about $9 million, as is reflected on the pie to the right, on the bottom corner. In essence, that change of heart by the state has led us to bring to you this item, because originally we intended, as you can see on page 2, there are again three bar charts. The bar chart at the top is nothing but the principal and interest payments made that are expected to be made by this bond that was sold back in December. The bar chart on the left is what was literally represented to you December 7th, where basically, if you can see a little orange color on the first year, which is the year that we're under, that's what was expected to be the local share of BISD. By virtue of the change of heart by TA, now the bar chart you see on the right is what the Commissioner of Education is suggesting that we amend our IFA application for, thus reflecting an increase of about $450,000 for the first year, and then in years to come, about $500,000 a year. Going back to the presentation that we made to the board and presentations that we have had with staff, our firm has been very consistent over the fact that this sort of events can happen. And we had disclosed at the various meetings that things like this could happen. We basically thought that this financing will be funded straight through grants by the state and the feds, and now you'll be required to pay a local share. Based on what we know today, if we would have known this then, back on December 7th, our firm would have still recommended for you to sell those bonds back on December 7th. You know, people, we have been told that this $600,000 payment is a bigger payment than you anticipated it is, but we believe that the school district is in a financial condition to make this payment in lieu of the benefit. The benefit here, as you can see on the pies that we've shown you, basically you went and financed $26 million, and the payment requirement is about 50, and yet out of what the payment requirement is, the local district will pay about 9. The feds and the state will pay about 40% each. And I think that when you look at what other political subdivisions across the state do, it's very seldom that you find opportunities like this, where you have a federal and state agency helping you pay off your mortgage. So again, the item has been brought to you so that as the school board goes about paying the rental payment or the lease payment to the PFC, the Public Facilities Corporation, that was created for this purpose, you can therefore amend your budget accordingly. People have said that, why did we sell bonds back in December? If you go to the next page, on page 3, you'll find that we had to have sold bonds by December the 15th. We actually had to sell bonds and close the deal before December the 15th. I think at the time when we sold the bonds, we had to go to the Attorney General's office, get all these bond documents confirmed and signed off, and thanks to the help of Fulbright and Jaworski, we were able to do that. If you would have not been able to close on December 15th, we would have lost all of the state assistance, which would have been north of close to $19 million. So, as we know it today. Back then, when we came to you December 7th, we thought that the assistance would be north of $27 million. So today, on the next bullet on page 3, you'll see that we must now go to TA and basically file what they've suggested to be an amended IFA application. And that's where we want to come here to you with some guidance as to if you want to have us do that for you. And then on June 15th of this year, that's when your first payment will come due before the bondholder. Kerry, I don't know if you have any questions any comments you may want to make?
Good evening, Board of Trustee members. Yeah, I'm just here to answer any questions you may have on this item. I don't have a presentation about this item. I will say that you were presented with a letter from Superintendent Springston to the Texas Education Administration Commissioner Robert Scott, which lays out the factual timeline that your professionals, your staff, and the board went through in this bond transaction. And that's and I've reviewed through that letter, and it's an adequate and factual summary of the events that happened on this transaction. And so I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have tonight. At that point, I'll open up to the board for any questions for me or Noe Hinojosa.
Oh,
Ma'am,
okay. Let me go ahead and go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
thank you, ma'am. So in essence, sir, they're paying 80% of the total bill, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like 8%. It's about 80 cents per dollar, and the district is committed to pay 20 cents.
That is correct, sir.
Gosh, this is a real big surprise to us, Mr. Hinojosa. And I guess the bottom line was that let's let the public know that we were presented with something else differently, because it was. Through the time frame of the whole process, we were not all made aware of a lot of the indicators that were out there that we had prior to this coming before us. It is unfortunate that we're now in this situation knowing that we just got back last week and the state is telling us that there's not going to be any money. Very clearly, this binder states that. It might be a good deal for some of us, not for me, but the bottom line, the state is telling us to cut. Our administration just gave us a book on January the 26th stating that, you know, our budget depends on more than 80% for personnel-related cost. Gosh, from having to build buildings to have to keep my staff, you know, with a job because they have to maintain their homes and pay their bills. You know, they're telling me on a list here, before I even knew that this was going to happen, you know, counselors, librarians, nurses, technology, central campus. This is what's presented to us by the administration, that our budget doesn't stand strong. If I have to let go of staff, how can I even think of building buildings that we really don't have a priority right now because of the way we, you know, our finances are at right now? I don't know, you know, where we went wrong, what TEA was presented prior to when we submitted our application. I know that we can look at options, but we relied on the presentation before us. This board, some of us were in front of your staff, and we relied that the information that was given to us and presented was something that we could bank on and do well. I know that this deal was closed already. You know, why did we rely on TEA? Or I know that TEA posted something and then it ended up being something differently, but there's a lot of answers and a lot of questions to this matter. And this is, if I may ask Mr. Mitchell, the council, I believe this is a very serious matter because we have contracts in place. Some of us, what are the implications of the district? You know, where are we going to, you know, first of all, we formed a corporation that we did not even go to our constituents to decide to vote on this. I mean, it was somewhere, somehow, somebody took it upon themselves and said we needed to form this, which I myself, I can tell you that I was very uncomfortable. But, you know, I know that other board members have other questions, and maybe we can get some of the answers, and if not, we'll see at the end once everybody shares their concerns. But I'm going to tell you personally, I am not very pleased. But Dr. Escobedo.
If I may, Mr. Springston, what's
Yes, sir.
administrative take on this?
I still, I agree with what Mr. Hinojosa is saying here from his firm, that we're building buildings for kids. We're taking kids out of portables in most everything. And most of it has to do is that we're building something for kids. And I'm in the firm belief that our budget is strong. We do not have a weak budget. I'm in the firm belief that we have done things over the last several years to put new desks, put kids into different schools. We've seen our achievement ratings go up, even though the standards have gone up. We've seen new schools come in. I'm in a firm belief that building these things are going to be good things for our children, and that we will be able to withstand the obstacles that the state is coming with over the next several months. And I mean, Brownsville always has, and we always will. And I think you will also confirm with me about the financial status of our district. Am I right, sir?
Yes, that is correct, sir. In fact, it's kind of a, I'm sorry that you feel the way you feel, Madam President. The fact is, and as you know, I haven't been closely associated with the financing itself. My partners who were involved, one of them has chose to retire many years ago at his early age to do work around the world. But haven't seen the deal as I've seen it, haven't seen the files as I've seen them, the way we prepare ourselves to work not only with this board years ago on this matter. I feel very confident that we did a very good job in representing your interests. The fact that the commissioner changed, I guess, or the TA through the commissioner changed the way that this funding should come in play, that's what we share with you the same thoughts as to how this can occur. But in the end, in the whole scheme of things, when you look at the fact that this financing is going to cost Brownsville ISD $2.5 million a year for 18 years, and $600,000 is being asked of the school district to pitch in as its local share, and that $600,000, based on an unencumbered, undesignated fund balance of north of $70 million as we speak today, that's less than 1%. And frankly, I share with you too that as you've pointed out about what the state is talking about and what they're doing with the budget process, there's a lot of uncertainties out there in terms of how school districts may be affected. And I share those concerns with you. But the fact is that the first thing that is probably going to go away is funding of the school projects or school construction projects where programs like IFA may be non-existent going forward, and or EDA because of the challenges that the state budget has to address. I feel that this school district would have been just as much of a fault back on December 7th when you saw these bonds for having passed on the opportunity of getting this grant money. We represent a lot of political subdivisions all across the state. Last year, our firm was involved in close to 300 financings over the course of 2010. And I will tell you that no other political subdivision got the level of subsidy. In fact, literally I can tell you 98% of them got no subsidy. You pay dollar for dollar. My point here is not to justify the event or the circumstances that we find ourselves under. The facts are that for every dollar you pay in of principal and interest, two partners, the federal agents, the federal government and the state government, are paying 80 cents. And that's up to you to whether you should decide as to whether you should fund it or not.
Go ahead, Ms. Longoria.
Mr. Hinojosa, can you explain to us the change that TA made from the original figures that you had presented to us?
Basically,
Administration?
yes, ma'am. Back in March of 2010, our staff communicated to the TA staff, the TA commissioner staff, that there may be a possibility if BISD were to sell bonds, that the federal government, through its Treasury Department, will pay a significant portion of the interest cost of these bonds. So to bring it to reality, we sold about $26 million at about 5.79%, I think. And the Treasury Department is paying the interest cost of up to 5.42%. So literally about 90% of the interest cost is being paid by the feds on these bonds through a program called QSCAPs, Qualified School Construction Bonds. At the time that we made the request to TA was, if we get this subsidy from the feds, will you apply the formula on the bonds that we're financing as you always do with any other bond that we get no federal subsidy? Will you take into account the entire principal and interest structure of the bond, or will you ask us to net out the portion coming from the feds? And they said, no, we will treat that as if you got no subsidy from the feds. So in essence, the program that was presented to you on December the 7th was one that concluded that you will be getting gross funding for all your principal interest requirements. I think that based on what the Madam President has pointed out about the pressures that the state of Texas is going through with this budgetary process, they realize that where can we find some opportunities to get some funding or get to keep some of the funds that we're committed for. And I think in this case, the rule as it pertains to IFA very specifically states that there must be a levy of local share. In other words, the school district gets any benefit from the state must demonstrate that you are levying a local portion for whatever debt you finance. But we thought $150,000 was going to be more than enough. Well, in this case, they changed their mind and they said, we are going to take into account the federal subsidy. So when you take into account the federal subsidy, then they apply the formula to 60 cents. So I'm going to keep it simple. $1 is what we are out there obligated for. At the time that we sold the bonds, they were going to give us all $1 between the feds and the state. The state said, from here on, we're not going to pay you 60 cents of the dollar because the feds are paying 40 cents of the dollar. We're actually going to pay you only 66%, which is the formula-driven number that you get subsidy for, of the 60 cents left. So you get 40%, the feds get 40%, and you got to come up with 20%. That's what happened.
And you had not received notice until right after December 7th or before December 7th?
Now, we found out, in fact, we found out through January the 6th on a communication, I don't know if it was a telephone call, Tony, that was made to our staff about suggesting or actually requesting that we amend the original application back of June 15th of 2010. That's how we found out, through a phone call. The rules as of today have not changed as they are provided on the website of the TEA commission or agency, right?
That is correct. They have not changed since we went before the TEA in March.
So we're going back to March. That was when TEA placed what the rules were.
No, let me say, we're going back to March, Madam President, when we made a request to TEA
To submit.
for their opinion. And their opinion at the time was, we will help you pay for the bonds, whether you get federal assistance or you get no federal assistance. We will let you know if the rules change. And we had that specific communication with them back in March 2010. They never let us know that the rules had changed.
So-
Until January the 6th of 2 weeks ago, I guess 3 weeks ago now, with a telephone call.
Go ahead, Dr.
The
Sutherland.
6th, and we had already several board meetings, and this was not brought to our attention before?
No, ma'am. In fact, I know Tony wasn't with them on the 6th when that took place. That was just a recent conversation that we learned, and also through the letters that Fulbright had helped us write. We had a pretty heated little discussion about these back on January the 14th. 14th was the first, and at that time, on the 14th, it was decided that there were still going to be a couple more communications between Fulbright and Jaworski and a couple of people from the firm to go back to Mr. Crockett and talk to another lady by the name of Ms. Fisher, who is the head of those departments and what is being placed on the website. They came back to me on the 18th and said that it is a done deal, and this is the way that the commissioner is going to keep it. And at that time, we had decided to write the letters and get them all informed. I contacted the board president on the 19th to let her know that this is what has taken place, this is what I had found out, and that if she would meet with me on the 20th so that we could have a conference presentation with Fulbright and Jaworski and David Gonzalez, I believe, and there was a few people that were on that phone conversation at that time so that we could all have a realization of what really took place.
Yes, and I think I specifically learned about it on January 7th, and then representatives of Estrada Hinojosa and representatives of my firm attempted to contact Mr. Lawrence Crockett, who is the administrator of the IFA program, to explain to him our previous conversations and what he relayed to us about the treatment of it. And we tried to get him to realize the agreement we had going into this financing, and tried to, create this from being an issue going forward based upon the prior representations of the TEA. So we were trying to represent the district at that time between our conversation on the 14th with district officials and trying to get the TEA to do the right thing and apply the rules as they were laid out to us in March, as when we filed the initial request for application in June, as when we filed the amended application in December, based upon the closing of the transaction. In other words, the folks of Estrada Hinojosa and my firm have had continuous conversations with the Texas Education Agency and specifically the administrator of the Instructional Facility Allotment Program from March through to our sale date and past. And throughout that process, there was no notice to us or any district officials that the rules would be changed or applied differently. And it wasn't until January 6th that Estrada Hinojosa was informed, and then they contacted me to get me involved.
Okay, you mentioned that you had an amended application. So you've already amended it once?
No, it's required under the rules of the IFA program that based upon the sale of the bonds, you submit in June a preliminary application based upon projected debt service. Then when you sell your bonds and you close the transaction, you get a final debt service based upon the bonds. You then submit the final debt service to the TEA in compliance with the rules. So it's required under the TEA rules that you submit a pro forma debt service, a preliminary debt service, so that they have an idea of what your payments will be and what the IFA obligation will be. And then after you close your bond transaction, they require you to submit a final debt service based upon the actual sale of the bonds to your purchaser, which was done in compliance with of the IFA rules. And it's a procedural requirement that's required on the rules. It was done last year on your 2009 bonds and in prior deals with your unlimited tax bonds. It is the normal process in filing an IFA application and filing your final debt service numbers.
Dr. Saavedra, go ahead.
I think my concern, and this is more directed to Mr. Springston, if you got the notice on the 6th, yet Ms.
14th.
Teresas didn't get notified till the 19th, or in the 20th, you called her. I guess my concern is, why did we wait so long? This is really important, and I guess I want to ask, the council, what are the implications for this with the construction and everything that we have going on?
I didn't get it on the 6th. I didn't get the information on the 6th, ma'am.
Who got the
Didn't he-
information on the 6th?
Who got the information on the 6th? You all?
We did, yes.
Okay, and you didn't email it to the superintendent?
Well, I certainly didn't, ma'am. But I think our staff communicated to your staff shortly thereafter, whether it was the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 14th, I really don't know specifically. The fact of the matter is that when we talked to TEA, and I think when we had the conversation with your staff, we didn't see, per se, an instant reaction to alarm everyone. What we wanted to do was seek what we felt was the best strategy to basically go and find out as to how that change occurred. So to go out and sound the alarm button and not having to find out for a fact how this occurred, maybe it was an error in judgment in our part for not letting you know, but we didn't think that was necessarily the thing we needed to focus. What we wanted to focus was, how is it that the commissioner of TEA could change without changing the rules, making simply a request for us amending the application, which we have yet to amend, we have yet to file. There will be, there's a requirement, or they've asked us to file the amended application to reflect the subsidy on or about February the 11th. So we're not late for any fashion. We're not trying to rush on anything either, ma'am.
what assurance do we have with this? I mean, you know, we've already been given one presentation, and now we're being presented on something else. And it really, you know, I'm disturbed because, you know, we keep saying, yes, you're a wealthy district. Well, if we would be wealthy, we wouldn't be getting these reports to cut personnel or to do what we got to do or cut programs. That's how it works. If you have a healthy budget, why alarm our own staff and say, we're going to have to cut programs, we're going to have to do this, we're going to have to turn off lights, can't leave the, you know, the microwave plug. And we're trying to do everything we can to save and cut and make ends meet. So to me, if I have a healthy budget, then don't tell me that. I mean, I wouldn't expect administration to tell me to cut here and cut there. You know, that's how I feel. If I'm being told that our budget is a healthy budget, it's good, we're okay, then why are we alarming ourselves by cutting programs and saying, you know, we have to do this and we got to do that? It just...
Madam President, it's funny how we can describe health and wealth differently, but I said to you health, meaning the point of a $600,000 payment with a $70 million unencumbered unfunded fund balance is less than 1%, I believe. And that's what we mean when we say to you, the Commissioner of Education probably looked at the financial condition of the district and they said, a local share must be included. I'm assuming this. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just saying to you that there are a lot of decisions, just like the one you will be making tonight, being made up in Austin to basically confront just as big, or if not bigger challenges than the ones you will be having. But from our perspective, you know, it is what it is. The assurances are in that if we in fact amend the application as has been suggested to us by the Commissioner of Education, where you'll be required to pay $600,000. The Instructional Facilities Allowance Program is a program that I believe carries the moral value of the state of Texas, I mean the moral support of the state of Texas. So you cannot expect, once you have an agreement or a letter signed by the Commissioner after February the 11th, there will be no changes as to how much money over the course of the next 18 years you'll be receiving from the state of Texas, nor the U.S. Treasury as it pertains to the QSCAP program. That's what we know.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Just a few comments. I don't agree, or I don't disagree. This is bad news. I mean, this is obviously bad news. It's not good news. However, I still believe that we're getting a good deal here. If in fact we're getting 80%, 80 cents to our dollar. If I understand everything correctly, none of us on our end did anything wrong. And correct me if I'm right. It's something that came from the Commissioner's office, which, by the way, we have appealed to the Commissioner on multiple occasions, have we not?
Yes, sir.
I believe we've appealed even to the Governor's office. So we've done everything on our part, I believe. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the only thing we can do is you know, what I do disagree in is begin hiring people at such an early time. You know, for example, the architects. We begin hiring them right away. Why we did that, I'm not sure. I disagree with some of the awards that we gave. You know, for example, the last time we were here, we awarded to a contractor that was several $100,000 above another. I disagree with that to this date, and I disagree with the explanation that you gave me, Mr. Springston, and I say that respectfully. I think that from this point, all we can do is move forward. I believe we can still continue with our appeals. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain. These projects perhaps can be also given to the Bond Oversight Committee so that they can in turn help us maintain transparency. But I don't know what, you know, this is a question to perhaps to Mr. Springston, Mr. Hinojosa. At this point, tonight, what options do we have?
I think, and the School District Council and I have spoken about this earlier along with your staff, not necessarily at the same time, but I believe that we should submit an IFA application as requested by the TA Commissioner staff, and probably with a cover letter saying something to the effect that we reserve the right to seek, what will be the proper word, challenging the Commissioner on how is it that he was able to change this ruling, I guess.
How many school districts are going through what we're going
More than just you. I don't know the exact
A
number.
ballpark?
Well, I've heard, I heard the number bounced around that they used the word several. School districts have been requested to change, and you have to understand the TEA won't express numbers to us like that.
Right.
Okay,
I
but no, no.
think we did a little research, despite the fact that TA won't tell us how many school districts are out there. They did say several. Well, I assigned my staff to make sure that we go out and find what school districts sold bonds after August, and they're in the same situation that we are. And we found about 14 of them. And what makes it really hard for us, and that's why I believe that we do have a right at least to seek preserving a right to challenge them, in that they've said to us that other school districts are not questioning their actions. Well, as I told Mr. Springston earlier and Tony Fuller earlier, that what makes it different here is that other school districts may have gotten federal assistance, but their debt is being paid out of the other side of the tax rate, the interest and sinking fund portion of the tax rate, because they probably had voter bonds. Your bonds are being paid from the maintenance and operation. And that is what I share the concerns that the Madam President shared. That's where it makes it a little difficult for us, because it comes out of the M&O side of the equation. But again, it is what it is, and I think our only options, as I've said it earlier, is to submit what they requested with a letter saying we preserve our right, I guess, to continue.
So we're continuing our appeals process, and we may in fact, come out victorious, maybe. Bond counsel, did you have any indicators or any reason to believe or to forecast that something like this might happen?
Absolutely none. I mean, as I said, we, between Estrada Hinojosa staff and my firm, we've had numerous conversations with the TEA, and specifically Mr. Lawrence Crockett, who administers the Instructional Facility Allotments Program, and the originator of the email on March to Larry Jordan of Estrada Hinojosa, which, in his email, he specifically pointed out to the request for application that is on the TEA's website, and their bold-faced statement in that request that said that the calculation would be based on gross debt service unless there was a rule change. And so since that date, as I stated, we had numerous conversations with Mr. Crockett in the process of selling these bonds, and in the process of providing the final debt service schedule to the TEA. And all through that process, unlike what was said in his email, he never provided any notice or any type of notification or guidance to us that rule may change or that the rule did change. And it wasn't until January 6th when they were reviewing that final debt service schedule that Mr. Crockett decided he'd contact Estrada Hinojosa at that point.
Just one final question on my end. Mr. Michel, what's your opinion, suggestions, recommendations, et cetera?
I think at this point, the board's concerned and everyone acknowledges that you have an additional amount that you have to pay because of the way of a change the TEA made. I do think you need to pursue what you're doing right now to see if you can convince them to go back to their original position. And at the same time, I think you need to explore, other avenues, such as amending the application, while at the same time having that not operate as a waiver to contest this later on in a more formal means. You have right now, you've borrowed money and you have a contract to do that without really a way to change that. You can always attempt to see if you can negotiate the changes, that like you can with any debt you have with any mortgage. But, none of these, I think you can sit here and say that there is a path with a high probability, or at least as we sit here now, of knowing whether that's going to happen. And that if you're concerned about what you're expending in the meantime, you have various construction contracts that I understand, were entered into as one of the requirements, because this is a lease facility financing. You have the ability to temporarily suspend those contracts or even terminate for convenience if there's a need to do that, and that's something else you can explore if there's that need. But right now, you're under a relatively short time period, because what the district had requested in its letter that was sent out, and it was a very well drafted letter and persuasive letter, it requested a delay until the 11th of this month to be able to, because simply the board would not be meeting by the time they wanted the application to amend. So you have a short period of time, I think, in which to explore all of this, but the one thing I think you do want to do is pursue the informal talks with the TEA to convince
Appeal.
them to accept the original application, or the current application, rather.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Longoria?
Yes, Mr. Hinojosa, were you aware of a letter from TEA dated August 13th? It was addressed to the superintendent, notifying him that the application would be approved contingent on the receipt of additional information as described in the official notice. So they were already notifying you that it might be funded, it might not. So you still recommended that we go through with the whole process.
Yeah, I think it's a procedural letter, if I'm correct. I haven't done some of this in quite a while, ma'am. I've been in the business for close to 24 years, and this school district finance has become a little complicated, and couple that with what having to run a firm just kept me from knowing the details. But what I do know is that the application basically is part of a process that you're required to have by June 15th. The way they go about announcing to you as a school district the fact that you qualify for funding, it becomes real until after you have borrowed the money, until you have contractually gone out in the marketplace and incurred the debt. So if anything, that letter is conditional upon you, the school district, entering into a debt arrangement with the public markets. And then once we did, then it becomes official that you go get the letter. You go get the approval.
Yes, and actually, I mean, that's actually the award letter. What it is when you have submitted sufficient information about your financing based upon your application that was required to be filed on June 15th, the TEA then makes a determination of whether that debt is authorized under their rules to be awarded IFA. And at August 13th letter is actually the notice of IFA award. And we call that conditional approval. And whether it's a lease purchase bond or whether it's an unlimited tax bond issued by a school district, every district receives this letter. And every district receives conditional approval based upon compliance with the IFA rules. And that, at that point, what the TEA is looking for is, based on this transaction, they were looking for approval of the lease purchase transaction by the Texas Attorney General's office by the date of December 15th. They were looking for a final debt service schedule based upon the sale of the bonds before December or by December 15th. And then they were also looking for any other additional information to comply with the rules. And that's what that letter to the district was or is. It's actually a form of notification that every district receives when they apply for IFA and they've been awarded IFA.
So what issues are they referring to when it says it will not be?
That's receipt of the Texas Attorney General opinion. See, the rules have requirements. There's 5 requirements of what a district must submit in order to receive their final approval of IFA. And one of those, my responsibility, is to make sure we have Attorney General approval by December 15th. The other responsibilities are a final debt service schedule and the sale of the bonds. Those are 2 separate items by December 15th. Well, the sale of the bonds by December 15th, and then evidence of the final debt service prior to, I think, after the sale of the bonds. So those are the requirements under the rules that the TEA, we must comply with. They're well known, and that's what we did present to TEA, exactly what they were looking for according to Mr. Crockett. We presented that item to him, I think, on December 15th, the final debt service schedule and the Texas Attorney General opinion approving the project.
And did you assist in filling out the application?
I do not fill out the applications. Go ahead.
Our staff does.
Your
We fill
staff.
the application, yes.
So your staff filled out the application?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, because it's to my understanding that the IFA application was incorrect. So was that from your
No.
part, from your end?
Well, the application is correct according to the rules. And what they've said is they have requested to amend the application that was filed in order to, I guess, adhere the wishes of the commissioner, and that was to give less of a subsidy based on this new rules. Is that fair?
Yeah, I know of, I'm not aware of any
Errors.
errors that were in there. I mean, that was as a matter of fact, there was no request for amendments of that debt service schedule from June 15th all the way to January 6th. It wasn't until January 6th was the first request that there was a requested change to the district's IFA application.
If there was an error in the application, you would not be getting a second chance for applying for these funds.
Ms. Presas?
Go ahead, Ms. Peña.
Oh, I'm
Can
sorry.
we allow Mr. Aguilar and then you
Yes.
follow up on
No,
your,
I
go ahead,
apologize,
Mr.
sir.
Aguilar.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Tonight we have listened to our financial advisor and a legal person here tonight, and all we're looking at is it feasible to go at 20% local initiative? That's all it boils down to. We can talk about when we find out what the attorneys have to do to TEA, what they need to do in the future, but the bottom line is, can we afford this? And this is why we're asking Mr. Superintendent Springston, can we afford this? And the answer has been
Yes, sir.
yes. So basically, I still think it's a good deal at 20 cents per dollar. If there are any errors in the application, perhaps Mrs. Longoria would like to share with the board that error. But normally, when there are errors, they return the grant to the original grant writer, and for corrections, if not have not returned. I wonder where all these errors came about, and perhaps you'd like to share those errors with the board.
Of course.
Ms. Presas?
Yeah, can we, it was in the weekly letter.
was in the
Let me
weekly.
go ahead, allow Mr. Colunga, and then we'll go back.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was in the
and then we'll
weekly
go
letter.
ahead and allow you.
The
Go
letter
ahead, Mr. Colunga.
Springston wrote.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. In concurring with my colleagues, I agree that the investment is a rare opportunity to go forward investing in children in facilities. When else can we have this opportunity in the future to have these type of facilities improvement with our part being just 20 cents out of the dollar compared to the assistance that we're getting? It is something that compares to what are the alternatives. Do we want to consider the needs for the district in terms of facilities at investing 100% of the cost? It is something that has come to us as a result of the changes in the terms, but overall it's still a good investment that we need to consider seizing the opportunity. If we do not take this opportunity, another district would seize the opportunity to improve facilities through this funding. And overall, it's a good deal. As Mr. Aguilar pointed out, I think we need to consider the benefit to children and the need for BISD to improve their facilities, the overcrowding, the relief to that type of situation. We cannot wait. We need to do something now. Thank you.
Ms. Peña, go ahead.
Okay, one thing, thank you, Ms. Presas and Mr. Springston. One thing that I did know, or I did listen to you say, was that the rules have changed, but I don't see that they changed on black and white or
No,
documented.
actually, the official rules of the TEA have not been amended.
So is it my opinion, well, I'm just as a layperson here,
Yes, absolutely.
and not being as financially smart as you are,
I wouldn't say,
from what I see, because they had the conversation with you.
correct.
But the rules did not change as they appear on the website or as they appear with them at this point in time, am I correct?
That's correct. The
So-
rules are exactly the same as when you filed your original application in June.
So are we, and I don't want to step on toes, but I'm sure I'm going to. Are we being strong-armed very politely by people at the top, and let's see if they quietly go away and take what we feed them?
What I was advised, and I think what the Estrada Hinojosa representatives were advised by the TEA, was that the TEA was going to amend the rule, but the rules had not been amended yet.
And when they amend it, are they going to make it retroactive? Do they have that authority? Because they had already agreed with us, am I correct? I mean, we've already been told. That's what I'm saying.
Right, I
There's
understand.
still a lot that we can sit and fight with.
Absolutely, and this is a administrative law procedure that we're talking about, and
Negotiate, I'm sorry, it's the wrong word.
that's fine, and I understand where you're going.
Strongly.
Mr. Michel is well-versed in administrative law procedures, and he's your general counsel, and he'll be able to guide you through that. He is much more versed in amending of administrative rules than I am. I comply with their rules, and I do what their rules ask me to do, because that, is what they, in an unfortunate circumstance like this, I can't provide you with an adequate answer. We did exactly what the TEA asked us to do. That's all I can say, is from March 2009, or 10, through December 22nd, 2010, through January 6th, 2011, we did what the TEA asked us to do, and complied with what their rules are. And from delivering a Texas Attorney General opinion dated December 15th, 2010, to delivering the final final numbers, final debt service schedule on the sale of the bonds by December 15th, we did everything that the rules requested. That's what I can tell you. And I can tell you that it was just a statement that the commissioner had decided to treat the debt service differently, and that they were going to amend the rules in the future.
And as far as that there was an error in the application, if I may state, the letter that was written by Mr. Springston, one of the entries is dated, as he chronologically lists what took place. It says, on January 6, 2011, the financial advisor received a phone call from Mr. Crockett. So I figure the financial advisor being, okay,
This
I mean, from TEA, but the financial advisor received the call from Mr. Crockett, that's TEA, during which Mr. Crockett informed the financial advisor that the debt service schedule submitted with the IFA application were incorrect because they did not deduct the federal subsidy from the debt service required on the bonds. That's the error that Mrs. Longoria is referring to.
Okay.
Is that a miscommunication, or?
Well, it is. This is how we learned that the TEA decided to treat the debt service differently. In other words, Mr. Crockett said that we had to revise the debt service that was submitted to take into account the federal subsidy in reducing the debt service that the district would, or that the TEA would pay out of the IFA payments, and that they wanted a corrected debt service schedule that reflected the gross debt service versus, the net debt service versus the gross debt service that Mr. Hinojosa explained to you. So he was asserting that the debt service schedule that was supplied to the TEA based upon gross was incorrect in his eyes, that they had changed their policy of not counting the federal subsidy, and that he wanted it to be corrected in the TEA's words to include the net debt service as was presented to you here today.
Did anybody advise us that they changed their policy?
We were not advised until January the 6th.
So we have
And it
nothing
hasn't
in
changed.
writing? Everything has been a verbal communication?
That is correct, ma'am.
Well, I think we can really strongly negotiate, because it sounds very
Go ahead.
iffy to me.
Question for Mr. Hinojosa. Would it be a wise idea, some of us have maybe brought this up, if we suspend all activity for, say, a period of 30 days to give you and Fulbright an opportunity to continue the appeals process? I mean, is that something that will work, or would you recommend against it?
I think that the commissioner, and I think it's a good suggestion, I think the commissioner expects us anyway to have an application by on or about February the 11th. So we may not have 30 days.
60 days?
No, I'm thinking we got to submit an amended application by February the 11th. And I'm thinking that with that application, that we then, the last thing you don't want to do is not file the application because it's just another procedural rule.
Sure.
And if you don't file it, then you lose all the grants. And I'm thinking, oh, so you can adhere to that rule, but you can't. I mean, it's kind of interesting how this has been manipulated, but I just feel like we better comply with the rules and let them tell us what they're changing the rules for, or if they are. And
Okay.
No, as far as, are you asking, sir, about construction process?
Just all activities pertaining to these projects.
Right, I understand, but I agree with Mr. Hinojosa that the one thing that the district can't neglect or suspend is compliance with the IFA rules and submitting
and lose the grant.
the amended application.
So
by-
you would recommend against what I just said then?
Well, only in the regard to complying with the IFA, TEA rules at this point, with the filing within the deadline. As far as construction, the board is well within itself to hold off on spending construction funds until we get clarity on this matter. I will advise the board that we have a 3-year requirement to build the facilities on, to expend the construction proceeds, but we're within our first quarter of that, 3 years. And so we have time if you wanted to suspend construction efforts for 30 days, but continue the process with the IFA, that's well within your rights.
Mr. Springston, what would you think of that?
I would have to go back to the contracts and get with the council to look at what the ramifications are.
And that's correct. Your general counsel would be advisable on that.
I think we need to refer that to General Counsel. Mr. Mitchell, could you please answer that question about stopping the construction till further notice until we get to the bottom?
I think you'd have the ability to suspend because of the nature of your contracts, which are pretty common. There are IA variations on different things. You have the ability to suspend. What you would do, I think, in the first instance, and that's why I said the one thing you do want to do is pursue the efforts with the TEA right now so that they go back to accepting the current application. And you explore these others. The way you would do that is you would contact your contractors, tell them what you're doing, and find out if they have expended any efforts or funds, or they're losing anything by doing so, because you want to know exactly what you're getting into. They're partners with you, and you want to find out what's going on. But legally, you have the right to suspend your contracts temporarily.
Okay. Dr. Saavedra, go ahead.
I guess, Mr. Hinojosa and maybe council, if we amend, can we do it under protest to amend? Because would it change what the original application had?
I would suggest that you do file an application with a protest or with a right to appeal
Yeah.
that judgment. I mean, it's,
To say that we're in disagreement that we had to amend it in the first place.
I've told both counselors here, I just wonder if the commissioner has the arbitrary right to just change his mind. And I feel like many of you, who, by the way, despite the fact that some of you have expressed an opposite view to borrowing the money, some of you have signed documents at odd hours to ensure that the Attorney General's office will get this approved. And I can't thank enough, Madam President and Mr. Secretary, for being there for us. But the fact is that you do have a right to submit a protest, I believe.
Go ahead, Ms. Peña.
Mr. Michel, if we submit a new application, will this null and void the current application? Because that's going to change. Like, I'm just thinking here. I've worked for the state in the past. And sometimes, I hate to even say this, but you get to people to do things that they didn't realize what they were doing. But once they did it and signed on the bottom line, well, it nulls and void the previous, it nullifies. Is that what would happen? Or like Dr. Savera said, we sent an amendment application under strong protest that we still want the original application to be held as a valid application. So are we running that risk by submitting a new, amending the new application? It nullifies the previous application.
You know, I think what you're talking about with filing something under protest is you want to be able, if you're forced to do something that you don't think is legally correct, you want to be able to retain your right to challenge that later
Yes.
legally without waiver.
Yes.
Is really what you're trying to do through
Yes.
this point. And the issue is, can you be assured of that in
Yes.
this process? I don't
Yeah.
think that's something that you can be assured about, but what you do know is what was said just a moment ago, that if a TEA finds that something isn't timely and that you don't have an application,
Correct.
then, you know, quite a bit of your funding may be at risk.
Oh, no,
And-
I'm all
yeah,
for
yeah.
filing it. I understand.
and
I'm all for filing it. I just understand that they're thinking of changing the policy, they're thinking of changing the rules, and making it retroactive. But if there are applications that were already submitted and accepted, but the amendment came through, well, now they apply to the new changes because it's now dated as a new application with the amendments are new. So could we protect ourselves some way? I mean, you
I'm not
can't,
pretending to be an attorney, but I think this is what you end up doing.
well, you've
You
done this
file it,
before, so.
I may have done this quite a few times, but you amend an application, you submit it so you won't expose yourself and lose all the
No,
other
and that
guidelines.
we have to, but
And
that's why
then
my
you
letter
file
was
a prote-
directed
And then you'll
to,
file a letter appealing, protesting as to the change by the commissioner of this rule without going through the process of letting us know in time.
can we file them at the
and
very same
When you
time?
file that letter, they're gonna have to respond to you in writing, I'm gonna assume. And then at that time, when they respond to you in writing, then you will have to decide as to whether you wanna seek other avenues to attempt to collect that difference if you felt like you were mistreated. And at least you have evidence that even though you were, you submitted an amended application, you did it so you won't lose the other, the other money, the $18 million, but you're on record that from the moment you submitted, you were against submitting it. You were protesting because you felt you were mistreated.
Mr. Michelli, so would it be wise for us to file both of them at the same time?
I mean, yes, when you're talking about waiver, part of it is what representations you're making to the other party, and what you're saying here is we're submitting a new application in this scenario, but at the same time, we intend to pursue means to go back to the current application and what's provided in there. And so to avoid waiver at a minimum, what you have to do is indicate that what you're doing. And then later on, our ability to avoid waiver may be challenged by TEA if we get into more complicated legal proceedings, or it may affect how they view the application. It's a bridge we have to cross when we get there, but I agree with you that that's a necessary step to do.
So if Mr. Springsteen, can we make sure that it happens in that manner, just so we can make sure we have some kind of positive negotiations after all this is said and done? That those
Yes,
letters
ma'am.
are done?
I will work with bond counsel and we'll.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to say final comments, hopefully in closing, I hope this is what I think we should do, obviously. Continue very aggressively the appeals process and hope for the best. Expect the worst, hope for the best. Simultaneously, of course, submit the amendments that are being asked of us here, and continue with the construction projects, because bottom line, we've been approved for the opportunity to begin with. That's already been approved. And more importantly, these are buildings that we need. It's not what we want, it's what we need. And I think the bond oversight committee, well, their agenda's already out, but these projects can be also, given to them, give them a little more work to do for a longer time, and just have them help us, just maintain the transparency like I mentioned earlier. I think that, for a moment I thought maybe suspending projects for 30 or 60 days may be an idea, but when I think of it, I don't really see how that would benefit us, because these are projects that we're going to follow through with anyway, because we've been
Yes.
approved. So, that's what I'd like to say, just in closing.
I'll say that the QSCB program, the federal subsidy program, was not extended by the federal government. There are some QSCBs being issued in 2011 based upon the 2010 allocation. It is, there is no chance, well, it is not known whether the federal government will see fit to bring that program back, but it has substantially benefited your district. It has substantially benefited many school districts in financing, and it is an opportunity that we don't know will come back and benefit your district in future years.
Longoria, you still have one?
Yes, one last comment. Okay, I agree with the rest of my colleagues that this is a good deal. However, this is not the right time to go for it. I was totally against it from day one because of the state making the budget cuts. And to begin with, we're gonna have to pay, we were gonna start paying $848,093 annually. But now, since it changed, TA changed the formula or the criteria, that increased it to $659,021 more, which totals to $1.5 million annually. With this $1.5 million, we could pay 30 teachers.
No. You were only expected to pay about $150,000 as the bonds were sold back on December the 7th, only for 1 year, the year that we're in, 2011. What TA Commissioner has said is they want you to make a payment of not 150, but about somewhere around 650. So it's not $1.5 million. It's only 650, the local share. From
Only
year,
650.
And why is that there?
Okay, well then, I'm reading this from a document from Mr. Springston's office.
well, I'm just telling you, and it's a matter of record, and it's on what we're giving you tonight.
So are you telling me that the superintendent is incorrect?
I'm telling you, what I'm telling you tonight is what I'm giving you tonight. I don't know, I don't have anything in front of me that, of that letter, but conceivably, for a
Mr. Springston,
fact,
can you explain to us?
I'm not sure. I'd have to read that part of the letter and work in consultation with.
Sure. There could have been a loss in translation, but the facts of the matter is that the payment will be $650 for 2011, and then it will drop slightly over the course of the years through 2018 at $500,000 thereabouts each year. It's not $1.5 million.
You see, there's a lot of questions here today. Council, if you could please refer to us as to what would be the best thing we can do for today until we get everything squared away. I know that that was attached to our backup. So
We only owe
if we can proceed with the, I feel that we're just rushing into this, so everything was done so quickly. And we have a deadline. I mean, we've been deadline after deadline. I know that I'm gonna tell you this, and it's not for the public to know. I was supposed to go out of town on December the 12th. Tickets, airfare, everything planned. I stayed behind because I have a commitment to this district, and I had to sign those documents. And I was told, you have a deadline, we have to meet the deadline, and I did. And I think that at this point, I feel very uncomfortable when we shouldn't be pressured at any point in time. And it seems like this issue has been, so quickly brought to us, and that's why we end up, falling behind on the project. But what do you recommend, Mr. Michelle? How are we gonna vote on this item? What's gonna be your recommendation as your council? Can we look into this matter and make sure we get all the clarification of the figures? Especially right now, we don't really have our budget together, so we really don't even know which direction we're heading. So can you maybe give us two options so we can wrap it up?
Ms. Presas, I'm sorry if I may interject, please.
Yes, Ms. Peña.
And Mr. Springston, before he answers that question, can he answer, are these numbers incorrect in that letter that was composed?
Let me get full. Corey, could you come up and grab this? And
That letter was sent to TEA, if I'm not mistaken, January the 25th, 24th. So
That's
It was composed the 24th.
this is the letter that we were in consultation with. I'm not for sure about those numbers. I think they're reversed.
And I apologize to the community, and I apologize to everybody, but you see, sometimes we want to expedite things and we want to rush into things without even paying attention to the actual figures. And we can no longer continue to do this and run this business like if we don't pay attention to the numbers.
Well, I think they're the experts, and I think they have given accurate information. If somewhere along the line, the superintendent misread some of these figures, could be something else. But I don't think, Jose Estrada firm will be giving us any wrong information, because this impacts millions of dollars, you see.
Yes.
So I tend to believe they're the experts. Now, to ask this also the attorney, our attorney, to see how we're going to vote, that's not his decision, it's the board decision as to how we vote. I think he's already made some two or three times recommendations to go on with this because of fear of losing that money. And again, Mrs. Peña suggested that we go ahead and file a protest. So,
Okay, Mr. Aguilar, we're getting the numbers back and see who's aware of those numbers, because those numbers were placed on a letter, sir, with all due respect. That's why we're trying to make sure that if Mr. Springston was given those figures, how did he come about to those figures? That's all, sir.
all
We're
right,
not pointing fingers at anybody.
Fine.
We just need to clarify, and he is our counsel, so I figured maybe we could direct ourselves to him and see what he recommends. Does he recommend that?
He cannot recommend, he
Proceed?
can give you options, ma'am.
So your advice is to continue with the procedures that we have in place, which is the letter has gone out.
Yeah, I'm not sure in terms from a legal perspective whether there needs to be a vote by council. I'm not sure that there does need to be one. I guess really to just summarize, right now you have a debt that you have to pay. You want to preserve your position, which is a source of funds to help reduce the actual money that you pay for that. The only thing that I think you can do with any certainty and quickly is to pursue the negotiations with TEA to see if they can accept the application in its current form. You're under a short deadline. In the meantime, either there's going to be more clarity, you may be able to get additional time or a forum, with the commissioner or someone more extensively, and I think that's what you need to pursue. And at the same time, these other options that I talked about, you can also explore in terms of suspending construction, in terms of, looking at the terms of the financing. But, all of that is really just an exploration. So I think you continue on the path you're on from a legal perspective. And I say that in part because any of the more legal challenges or things you may do down the line are going to be time-consuming and uncertain. And I just don't think at this point the
So
board
no
can make an
action,
informed
no action on
recommendation.
this item, we'll just keep us moving forward.
So no action for tonight. Did you want to?
Well, I was gonna say, maybe Mr. Fuller can explain the numbers, since that's a letter from our district. Or did we ever get them explained?
Who can
I
explain?
think what that is an excerpt of one page of maybe several bond offerings. I mean, when we submitted, if you recall, we did 4 bond issues that totaled up to $25 million. And I believe that each of the bond issues had an individual application. So what you may have there is just an excerpt of one page of one application that tells you $1.5 million is your annual payment, the bond payment is $1.5 million. But no, the total bond payments for all 4 bond issues is $2.5 million. So what I tried to do for your benefit was to give you a summary from a macro perspective of the 4 issues, mortgage payments. But as Mr. Michel has said to you, just so you know, we're a broker-dealer house. I'm the majority shareholder of this company, and I'm subjected to Securities and Exchange Commission laws. Everything that I said to you tonight can be used against me. And I've been in this business 23 years with my own company for 19 years. I have no vested interest in telling you misrepresenting facts or whatever. What I do have an interest is to ensuring that your appeals and that your challenge and your protest are heard by the commissioner, and that's all we can do.
Thank you.
One more question, Mr. Mitchell or Mr. Springston. Has construction stopped on this project?
No, ma'am, they have not.
Okay. No more,
No action needed.
no action, according to council, no action is needed.
So that means everything will still be in place to
Well-
go forward at this point?
You know, the
If I
thing is,
may, I do want at least a consent that we're supposed to go forward in submitting an
no,
amended
that's
application.
why we,
Because there is, Madam President, I know that these,
We need your guidance.
yeah,
If we
well,
don't
more
submit
than
the
that is that we're
application-
talking
You
about
have to fill
changing
that
funding.
application out. Yeah, he has to.
You betcha.
Ms. Presas, if you're asking, do we consent for you to amend and send in a new application, by all means.
With a
With a
protest or with a.
Huge
an appeal.
protest,
Sure.
huge. Emphasize that,
Yes, ma'am.
highlight it. Just kidding, but yes,
may I
you
make a
have our
motion?
consent.
go, go ahead.
Madam
I have a
President?
motion on the,
I
Table.
move to guide, our bond counsel and financial advisors to aggressively continue the appeal process for this decision by the Commissioner of Education, while at the same time, under protest, file the amendments that are required, and thus move forward with the projects as planned.
Second that motion.
Second.
Second.
motion by Dr. Scoville, second by Ms. Peña. All those in favor?
Discussion?
No discussion?
You want more discussion? God almighty, sir,
It's-
please.
procedural
It's just procedure,
requirement,
yes,
yeah.
procedurally, yes, he has to ask that.
So, just for clarification, after this, so if it goes through with the original what was presented to us,
Right. What I understand the legal requirements for that motion is you're going to pursue the efforts to have the TEA accept the current application. But if the deadline of the 11th comes, that an amended application conforming
file.
to what they're requesting be filed so that you preserve your ability to get, to
But
keep your
this-
application alive and
but
get
this is
those
not for
monies.
the changes that they're proposing, that they forward back to us. This is with the original presentation that was given to us.
That was the first part of the motion. I think the second part of the motion is to go ahead and amend it, which would involve the higher payment at issue.
I don't agree to the higher payment, sir. We need clarification on that. I myself,
If I may?
I want to approve that we go and we amend to try to keep the same original presentation, to see if we can get the commissioner to approve what we had presented to them, or they had presented to us first. And if not, I am not going to approve that we pay more.
No,
Why
but
should we?
If, Ms. Presas, if I may, the procedure with the state applications is, we have one on file, and we're gonna strongly, like I said, I think we're being strong-armed, so we can politely strong-arm them back and say, where is it in writing? But there are rules and policies that we have to follow. If one of them is that we have to put in an amended application, otherwise we fail to comply with the requirements, we have to do that amendment, am I correct? Otherwise, it could be rejected? Totally.
Exactly. In fact, what they have is the original application reflects what we did December 7th. If you choose not to amend that application, they will reject it.
They could null and void the whole thing.
Yes.
So we have to, in essence, amend it, but fight vigorously for the original application. But before we can go back and fight, we have to have followed and complied with all of their requirements.
Yeah, they have us, yeah.
So I think that we already voted on that, and that's correct.
Can we move on?
I think that'd
No.
be correct.
Can you read the motion?
Can you read the motion again, please? Because
Who wrote the motion?
Mr. Escobedo
He said
mentioned
it, but
his
who wrote
motion.
it?
Well, I didn't wrote it, I just kind of.
You didn't write it.
He thought it. and
My motion was as follows, if I can remember, was to continue aggressively the appeals process, while at the same time, submit the required amendments as required by the Commission of Education, and continue moving forward on these projects. I had failed to mention also that to move this, to award these bond projects to the Bond Oversight Committee. I don't know if that requires board action
Can
or
we
not.
recall
And that amended policy will require a higher bond payment or higher requirement from the BIS.
Ma'am, would you, excuse me, sir, ma'am, would you give us the vote on it?
Mr. I didn't even,
Dr. Escobedo made
Motion.
the motion, and
Ms. Peña seconded. All those in favor? And it was, I'm nay. No, Ms. Peña seconded. You motioned, Ms. Peña seconded, and all those in favor?
You said aye.
So you said 5. I'm against it.
Well, I
because
mean,
Okay.
you vote the way you
know,
want.
and you,
Presas.
Ms. Longoria?
Ms. Plesas, if I may?
I'm against it.
You're against it? Dr. Saavedra against it. So you have 5 yeas and 3 nays. Go ahead, ma'am.
We took a vote, if I may, we took a vote procedurally. You have to bring it, make a motion
Okay,
to
let's
bring it back.
Let's bring
So
it
you can
back.
Bring it back, and then you can vote again, but you can't change it without a motion to make a new.
Well,
No, but yes, Mr. Escobedo, Dr. Escobedo, you put in there the
Mr.
amendment
Michelle, can
under
you-
protest,
Ma'am,
right?
the more we speak, the more confused I get. I mean, this is one at a time here.
please, Mr. Michelle, could you please?
I'm asking you the question, sir,
What's your question?
and it was just me speaking
What's
to
your
you.
question?
You put in
Please.
there under protest for the amendment.
Yes.
Okay, so we have to have
We made that perfectly clear.
I'm not the one with the problem here.
Okay.
Mr. Michelle, could you please see how we can recall the vote? Because I know we have 3.
Make a
that-
motion.
We can recall the vote back. I know that I didn't even get to vote. It was just, I didn't even call out the votes. I just said first and second, and that was it. I didn't even say 7-0, 5-3. It wasn't called out. And I'm normally really
I thought you said.
good
you
at
wanted to-
calling everything out.
I guess you
So-
could move to reconsider.
Well, we
Yeah,
can
it-
reconsider.
Right, I mean, there did seem to be a motion, a second, a call for a vote, and some indication, but I think it may have been difficult for here to tell how people voted on this. If you want to move to reconsider, someone who was on the prevailing side needs to make the motion to move and get a second. And if that's what if you want to do, then that's what should be done to move this along. Otherwise, I mean, that's what Robert's Rules requires. So that someone who was on the prevailing side, which
It's pretty much
at
everybody.
least 3 of you are saying you don't think that
We
you
don't- we're
indicated a
not
vote.
voting
One
for
of the
it.
others needs to
Clear
move,
the motion.
needs to move to reconsider, and then there needs to be a second of that.
I move to reconsider the motion.
It needs to be someone on the
Somebody
prevailing
from
side.
there.
Okay.
But the vote is already 5-3 then. That's how we passed it. 4-3. 4-3. That's how we passed it. Okay, so then motion carries. 4 to proceed with the motion that Dr. Escobedo stated, and 3 against. We move along to item number, public audience. This is a time for citizen, staff, or students to provide their comments to the board. Statements and questions from the audience will not be permitted during the other portions of the meeting, so please let us hear from you now if you have comments to present. To have your comments heard tonight, your name and the subject matter of your comments must appear on the sign-in sheet, which is located in the rear of the meeting room. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes to complete his or her comments. With all due courtesy, the presiding officer will strictly enforce that time limit. If a group of people want to be heard on the same topic, the board asks that they designate a spokesperson to avoid needless repetitions. The board has adopted rules to preclude the abuse of open forum by, for example, anyone uselessly repeating the same comment or complaint meeting after meeting. All participants must understand that if your comment in the judgment of the presiding officer constitutes a complaint against an employee or officer, the presiding officer will interrupt and ask you to stop and direct you to proceed with the BISD's formal grievance procedures, be that DGBA, FNG, or GF local. With those cautions in mind, we will now be glad to hear the general comments. And we have Myra Imperial.
Hi, I'm her mother. I'm not Maya. We'll do our best to keep it according to your rules, 5 minutes. She can read pretty fast, but then, ooh. And I'll be her assistant and poker prodder, passer outer. Thank you.
It's okay, just you can be calm, Miss Myra.
Her name is Maya, M-A-Y.
Maya.
The Secret to Victorious Swimming. My name is Maya Athena Imperial. I'm a 6th grade student at the Episcopal Day School. I am in the process of completing my science fair project. It began in August 2010 and will be judged and graded in March 2011. For the past 2 years, I have swum with the Great White Sharks, the Brownsville Aquatic Swim Team with Coach Ryan Shea. I love to swim. I came tonight on behalf of all the middle school children who swim or want to learn to swim, and I came to appeal for the revival of a middle school swim team for several reasons. Brownsville kids have a growing number of health problems because of obesity among children, diabetes, high blood pressure, asthma, and self-esteem problems, and body image problems, to name a few. From my background data search, it is clear that physical activity and exercise is a key in treating these medical conditions. Furthermore, a wide variety of competitive sports for middle school and high school students are other ways to promote physical fitness. Swimming is a life skill, a competitive sport, and a lifelong exercise. As I will show you tonight, kids who begin competitive swimming prior to high school have higher performance and achievements during high school. I recently learned about the Great Summer Swim program for BISD children. It is great exercise during the summer and a great life skill. What happens next after the kids learn to swim? Swim team and competition will be next, right? No, I learned otherwise. There used to be a swim team for middle school students a few years ago, but was discontinued. Rather than be bummed out and depressed, I set into action with my 6th grade science fair project. Please take a few more minutes so I can share with you what I have learned about the secret of victorious swimming among our BISD high school swim team members. What I set out to prove with my science fair project. Does the grade in which a swimmer begins competitive swimming affect their ability to qualify and achieve regional and state competition outcomes at high school level? Specifically, if one begins competitive swimming prior to 9th grade, will he or she qualify and achieve regional or state swimming competition levels more often or more frequently than those who start competitive swimming during high school level only? This project was approved by my science teacher, Ms. Sandra Morfitt. It follows the governing rules and ethics of scientific data collection. After meeting the 6 high school swim coaches, I interviewed 103 BISD swimmers by questionnaire. I went to the 6 a.m. and the 4 p.m. swim practice sessions at the Margaret Clark Natatorium. Coaches and swimmers participated willingly. Questions were not private or protected in sensitive nature, and no names were asked. Please see my questionnaire as I continue. Okay. I would like to describe the current BISD swim teams. The majority of the swimmers are either freshmen or sophomores. 41% are female and 58% are male. The ages range from 14 to 19. 33% are 9th grade freshmen, 22 are 10th grade sophomores, 27% are 11th grade juniors, and 18% are 12th grade seniors. When did you begin competitive high school swimming? This is a very important question along with the next question. I have been informed by the high school coaches that only the current 11th and 12th grade swimmers had the opportunity to swim in middle school. 45% swam competitively before 9th grade. 36% started in 9th grade. 8% started in 10th grade. 8% started in 11th grade. And 0.9% started in 12th grade. Question 5 refers where they would have competitive swim experience prior to 9th grade. Some had several answers. 19% were on a middle school swim team, 2% were on an elementary school swim team, and 32% were on a private or community club, mostly Blue Dolphin or Brownsville Aquatics. As a point of interest and to further inform you about the BISD high school swim teams, question 16 asks why they picked swimming as their competitive sport. Some answers were to learn how to swim, a good workout, they wanted a scholarship, it's better than football, I don't like what everyone else likes, to name a few. Question 17 asks swimmers to identify emotions they may have experienced during competition. Confident at 68%, strong at 48%, weak, unsure, and self-conscious were significantly lower. The fill-in portion included flying, happy, nervous, determined, motivated, excited, stress relieved, free, and relaxed. Now I will show you how early how the early onset of competitive swimming affects achievements and qualifications. Questions 17 to 13 are about qualification and achievements at district, regional, and state competition level. I tallied the answers of every questionnaire onto a blank questionnaire sheet. These binders contain 103 questionnaires and the tally summary of each school. The onset of swimming was compared to the reported regional and state competition frequency. Participation in district swimming is required and not based on qualification times. There was a subtotal summary for each school, 6 schools total. From that, I calculated the percentage of all schools. For all BISD swimmers, I entered the percentages on a data chart and a bar graph. I did include the district percentages in the bar. I did not include the district percentages in the bar graph. Please see the bar graph and data chart with percentages of regional and state swimming achievements, all swim team members. This represents all the swimmers from BISD. Among the students who went to regional and state competitions, 65% swam at regional and 58% who swam at state began competing swimming prior to 9th grade. Those who began only in 9th grade or later, the percentages of regional and state achievements were lower and lower.
Thank you very much for your presentation. These are excellent numbers. We'll certainly review them, and thank you for your effort and for your work.
Could she read her final paragraph?
Sure,
Our own
final
pleasure.
paragraph.
The last paragraph.
Please consider the renewal of competitive swimming middle school. From the research I have gathered and analyzed, total 103 BISD group and subsampling of positive qualifiers, the age and grade when one begins competitive swimming affects and seems to predict future success as a high school swimmer and possibly on the whole team. The more successful we are in high school swimming as a team and as individuals, greater opportunities arise and will allow high school students and swim teams to achieve higher. The evidence leans toward early onset of competitive swimming yields stronger, faster, better swimmers and the secret for a victorious swim team.
Thank you so much for your presentation and for your interest. Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Patrick Hammis, subject to be discussed, actions and words.
Superintendent Springsteen, members of the board, fellow educators, community members. Let me start off my remarks tonight with a public apology. When I was in front of you 2 weeks ago, during the same time, I made several comments. All were accurate but one. And that was the final comment that I made to the board, in which I said that the board had increased their travel allowance from $40,000 to $110,000. I misspoke. I'm usually very good about verifying my facts, and I did not this time, so I give a public apology to all the board members. At the same time, I'm hoping that the board, if they also make a misstatement, whether it be accidental or intentional, in the future, or based upon present observations, past observations, would also make a public apology. Over the last couple of months, we've noticed that there have been misstatements about accounting, budgeting, and on the fund balance. Actions and words. Let me backtrack for a second. It is important, not just because I represent an association or I chair a committee for the district, but also for myself, that whenever I get up to speak, that I speak honestly and factually. Okay? I don't do it just for the associations, but because my own integrity is important to me. People who have known me for any length of time, and I've been coming to this board for roughly 20 years, know that I do my very best to speak factually. On the actions and words, we're looking at trying to improve communication. Last October, we held the Association of Brownsville Educators held a forum for all the political candidates running for school board. During that forum, all candidates were present, were asked about having an open door policy. We were told by all candidates that an open door policy was available. What we've seen in the last 2 months, we've made numerous efforts via conversations, in person, phone calls, emails, texts, to meet with the new and re-elected members, of which only one of the three has met with us. We're not sure why this may be, and let me quote Martin Luther King. People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other. As I've been listening to the first part of this meeting, there are many things that we need to have conversations about, and we want to have a conversation with each and every one of you. When we hear that Irving ISD, a suburb of Dallas, is already preparing a budget to lay off employees, we want to have a conversation. When we hear that Austin ISD is looking at laying off 300 teachers and all part-time librarians, we want to have a conversation. When we read in the newspaper that San Antonio Northeast ISD is contemplating not renewing 1,000.
Mr. Hammond, you have 1 minute left.
Thank you, ma'am. Probationary teachers, we want to have a conversation. When we see that the chairperson for the Texas School Board, for the Texas Superintendents Association, the Chamber of Commerce chairperson for the state of Texas, and the Small Business Association chairperson for the state of Texas, all have concerns about the funding in education, and that the cuts that are being proposed are unnecessary, we want to have a conversation. When we look at jobs, when we look at salary, and we look at benefits and how it will affect not just the employees, but all members of this community, we want to have a conversation. We hope that you do too. Thank you.
We now have Mr. John Clark, miscellaneous.
Good evening, members of the board. Mr. Springston, it's nice to see you tonight. Just a quick note, I've known Patrick for several years, and I can attest to his honesty, his absolute, complete honesty. Okay. I took notes in the earlier portion of the evening. We were talking about our bond issue. And let me read back some of the things that some people said. Mr. Noe Hinojosa said, there's been a little change in what TEA will fund. And let's see. Mr. Hinojosa said, I didn't want to sound the alarm button. Okay. And there was a time when Mrs. Garcia said, if I have a healthy budget, I won't be told to cut. And Mr. Hinojosa responded, it's funny how we can describe health and wealth differently. You know, I do want to talk about that. I wish Mr. Hinojosa was still in the room. It's better to talk about people when they're still here, but he's decided to leave. So I am going to continue. Health and wealth differently. You know, it seems that we do have two budgets for different parts of this school district. We have a budget for construction that seems to go ahead full speed. In fact, I agree with Mrs. Garcia's, as an observer who's been to many of these meetings, I agree with Mrs. Garcia's comments that I feel everything was rushed so quickly. We shouldn't be pressured at any point in time to pass these types of, I'm adding to pass these types of issues. And sometimes we're rushed into paying, we are so rushed, we're not paying attention to actual figures. And look where we are today, that we're going to spend more money. And I feel we have two budgets for two different districts. We have the district that goes ahead full speed with construction. In fact, before these bonds were even passed, we were moving portables out of the Hannah area to begin construction that had not yet been approved. This strikes me as, the whole process strikes me as really being somewhat of a gamble. It depended on TEA approving the IFA portion of this that would have made it more affordable, but that was not approved before the bonds were voted and approved. It was a gamble on that. And I really have to wonder if that was reckless. And you know, I could understand this approach in a time when we're financially healthy. And Mr. Springston, in his quote, I am in the firm belief our budget is strong. Well, it does seem to be strong when we want to go full speed ahead with construction, that it even starts before we have passed the bonds. And yet, how strong is that budget when we're looking at cuts in stipends, possible cuts in personnel, possible job firings, possible larger classes, longer days, more crowded classrooms? It seems like we have two budgets, two districts, two different priorities. One, we have a strong budget, and one, we have a crisis budget. You know, I'm speaking here as president of a teachers association, and I'm speaking from a teacher's perspective here, that we are not looking at this as being well done in the district. We're looking at possibly losing our jobs or receiving less pay next year. And also, very possibly being less effective in the classroom, something that's very, very important to us. And yet we have a district that, well, we have financial advisors that say it's a little change in what we'll fund. We feel that this is reckless, is cavalier, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like we're being valued. It feels like the priorities are not where our priorities are as teachers, and that we're not truly being considered as our role in the district. Excuse me, I lost my thought there. I'm going to conclude this with saying that, you know, I want you to take a look at how we're handling things here and keep in mind our educational priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. We now go to closed meeting as pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074 and 551.082. Level 3 Board Review and Grievance. It's now 7:35. The board will now reconvene. It is now 8:30. We now referred back to board action on level 3 grievance 008-10/11. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move to agree as discussed in executive session with our attorney and have it documented if accepted.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Motion carries 7-0. Motion by Ms. Peña, second by Dr. Escobedo. We now go to consent agenda item. Item number 8, recommend approval resolution number 015/10-11 to extend the current depository contract with BBVA Compass Bank for 1 2-year term beginning July 1st, 2011 and ending June 30th, 2013. There was a question, Ms. Longoria?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to know, or would like to recommend that we go out for bids instead of extending the contract.
Okay. That sounds reasonable to me. You have a, do I have a, go ahead, Ms. Peña.
Yes, I'd like to make sure that we have, like, compare what the rates and what's, before we do any of that. So I'd like to second that motion that maybe we can go out there and see. I just would like to know what it's going to entail to move all this stuff over, because it's a lot.
What's out there? Let's go out to the market and see what's offered to us,
And
because
see
right
if
now
it's
we're at the terms.
Right, and see if it's worth the effort of moving. No.
I agree. Ms. Dr. Saavedra, did you have a question?
No, ma'am, I agree.
Okay, so we move to go out for bids and to see the comparison that's out there for us, what's offered to the district. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Motion by Ms. Longoria. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Saavedra. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Excuse me, for the record, I want to say this is not administration's recommendation because we did a study 2 years ago. Compass Bank had interest rates that were above any of the other three big firms, Wells, Bank of America, and the last one was JP Morgan Chase. They were giving us the LIBOR rate minus points, which was still ahead of the T-bill rates. The other banks did not guarantee us any rate, except they would be below the T-bill rate. Second,
If I may, I'm sorry, Mr. Fuller, I don't mean to interrupt you. But when I said let's check, that's exactly what I want to make sure. I want to make sure that if we move, we're going to get the best deal and we're not going to go somewhere.
well,
and
right
not make-
now, we have the best deal as of 2 years ago. There's no guarantee that what the deal that's on the table with the renewal is gonna be there after the
Now.
RFP or
Well, then
bids
we,
process.
and we haven't seen either what's out there for right now, so I was really skeptical of having to sign my name on that. I felt that it was necessary that we can bring it back.
Yes, ma'am,
and
you
for
made
this
that
board
clear
to
a couple
decide.
weeks ago. when
Yeah,
you-
yeah, and I
And
just
if
don't
I
want to
may,
continue to sign any.
If I may, what is the date of this renewal contract?
The original was May of 2009, and we have.
The
because
contract
of,
expires when?
June of 2011.
Oh, we still have
So
plenty of
is
time.
it possible that we can have something brought to us so you can show us that, where we might come back and reconsider, not having to go out for RFPs?
If there's no guarantee that Compass will renew at the rates that they currently have, once we go out for proposals.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Is there a way, and maybe we might even consider tabling this until, Ms. Paredes, if I may, I don't know if we can recall it and reconsider, because if you can bring us that information before we make some kind of decision of going out for RFQs, is it possible?
Short of a proposal, there's no guarantee the bank is going to answer.
No, I
any
understand
kind
that,
of
but can you tell us
questions.
what's, okay.
Well, what I'm saying is,
If we renew, it stays, yes?
IBOR rate minus points is better than the T-bill rate minus points, which the other banks were giving us. And I wish there was discussion before a vote. Also, the size of our investments, they have to collateralize as per the Public Funds Investment Act and the collateralization laws. Second of all, they have to be a large enough quality size bank to handle all our transactions, our electronic fund transactions, our checks, et cetera. So you're going to only get the 4 big ones, and that's going to be, we sent 16 proposals out 2 years ago, 4 came back in. Again, it's all based on investments, the size of the bank, but we'll go out for RFPs as the board wishes, but I cannot say the interest rates are going to be any better than what we have, but they must abide by the collateralization laws and the Public Funds Investment Act.
Is it
Gloria.
possible, I'm not done, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Michel, being that what we've been told by Mr. Fuller, and I apologize that we didn't have a discussion, because I personally failed to take that into consideration. It was in the back of my mind, but it went real quick. That was my fault. So is it possible that maybe we could table this, recall the vote and table it to look into this a little bit more before we go out there and cut our throats? Is what it makes it, that's basically what will happen if everything changes, right?
It's possible they'll send back information, but if we're going to change, we have to go out on RFP or a bid process, and that takes time. So, we're going to do it. We need to do it now. I know we have till end of June, but the problem is, I would like to bring this to the board well in advance to get it approved, because it's not an overnight change.
No,
We
it
have
takes,
check- We have checks to change, we have accounts to set up.
It's a major change.
It's a major change.
And I don't know,
it's-
yeah, I feel your pain, because with the way the economy is, this is not the time to be moving around your money.
So
in my
again, we
opinion.
will go out as the board wishes, but to say we can get the same deal, I can't guarantee
Yeah.
that.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
We
No.
took a vote already.
Yeah, no, I just would like
go.
to continue.
We move along to the next item. So we will go out for RFQs. Item number 9, information, discussion, possible action referencing the lease revenue qualified school construction bond series.
We did that.
Oh, we did. Sorry, my apologies. Now we go to item number 10, recommend approval of the following payments. Recommend approving to pay Janak and Associates Architects, LLP, $10,181.22. Danielle Breeden Elementary School, number 144, Robert Kisner Consultants, Inc., $8,236.11. And Daniel Breeden School, number 144, in Texas Descon, LP, $222,845. Brownsville Early College High School and Brownsville Academic Center for a grand total of $241,262.33 to be paid from local maintenance fund 199/qualified school construction bond fund. Miss Dr. Saavedra, you had a question on this one? That's on the, item
Yeah.
number 10, recommend approval for the payments.
Well, it was the same issue that we were discussing earlier with the
Number 9, referring some of the payment was going to.
Hughes Cab.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
the same issue that we were discussing with Mr. Hinojosa and Estrada.
Okay.
So do I have a
Got our
motion for
Just
payments?
to go move.
Motion made by Mr. Aguilar. Do I have a
Second.
second? Second by Ms. Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
3 yeas and nays, 3 nays.
Mr. Escobedo, Dr. Escobedo is gone. Dr. Escobedo?
Motion dies. Motion dies on item number 10.
So we're not gonna make payments?
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
We're a little too fast there.
Yes.
On this Brownsville Early College High School, what kind of services are we paying for?
Mr. Guerra?
What number are we on?
Guerra.
Number 10.
I have a question.
You're backed up, you have some sheets that look like this, and I apologize for not having the page numbers referenced, but here in the left column, it tells you the service, and then under the column E, it'll tell you the work that was completed for this application. In both of these projects, they are charging us for the job setup, the purchasing of bonds and insurance, for surveys, for fencing, and other site work services, minimal fees on that.
Okay, so none of these services could be put on hold, like, no?
Not when we've already decided that
Already.
we were gonna move forward
Okay,
Correct.
with protest.
right,
Right.
okay. I think she had a question.
So, the one that died is number 10, Ms. Presas, am I correct?
That is correct, Ms. Peña.
Okay, and it's for.
Let the records reflect that
I have a,
Dr. Escobedo has left the
left the
building.
building?
It is
Oh,
now
nice.
8:45.
Ask
Okay.
legal.
I have a question.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Ms. Peña.
Okay, we need to pay for the Breeden Elementary 144. Is Breeden, has this work already been done?
Yes, ma'am, all of the work that is on here has already been completed.
So then this is stuff that's already been, this is work that's been done for the district.
That is correct.
In
yes,
essence, we're paying a bill that we owe,
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
supposedly. So the board has decided not to pay its bill.
Apparently by not taking action, I believe that's. what
And
we're
how does that make us look with the community in my eyes? Because we harp and gripe about people not paying their taxes and we're not gonna pay our bills? See, this is where I'm confused. I thought, that's why I voted yes. I thought, Mr. Springsteen, unless I'm wrong, that work's already been done. It's not something that we're holding because you haven't done it yet. That work has already been done.
That's correct.
So we've decided
Actually,
to,
we're under contract, we're obligated to pay this,
okay, if we're obligated to pay, then,
under the contract, under the terms of
Under
the
the
contract.
terms of the contract.
and it just, it comes to us really more of a courtesy. But we have to vote to honor our contract?
Well, ma'am, we're looking at public funds.
Public
and-
funds.
And some of this, and so the board has to do that.
I think,
Well, I'd like to reconsider if we can, this vote, because this is paying, something's already been done. And this is our,
the fund balance that, go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
And you know what, also, Mr. Enrique Escobedo's motion is to continue going forward.
yes, he did.
And he didn't say to stop any construction. And
No,
we
he
already
didn't.
voted 4-3 to go ahead with the construction and to go on with the, and this item is
It's part of 9.
that, yes.
That's what,
Well, that's what we were saying.
that's what Dr. Seveda and I were sharing. This is part of
I
9. So,
second that motion to reconsider. You had a motion, didn't you?
yeah, I'd like to motion that we reconsider the vote for number 10.
Second it.
Because 9 is different, we were waiting for.
Right.
Yeah, for the ones that haven't started, right. But this is already done.
I think what has happened is that we're going too fast and not giving us enough time, Ms. Bresa, so
For
we were
discussion.
still with 9 and we were not ready for 10, so if we could
We're being
maybe
rushed.
make
You
sure.
wanna
Yes.
Reconsider, well,
We'll get the motion.
I'm
Mr.
just saying,
Michelle?
so that if we have discussion or whatever, we pay attention to everything that is on the table.
that is being discussed.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, there's a-
So again, I'd like
So
to
there's a motion on the table.
move to reconsider the vote for 10.
Second.
Yeah, I think there's a motion and a second. If there's any further discussion, now's the time. Otherwise, take a vote on the
Take a vote on
reconsideration.
the reconsider.
And if it passes, then you go back to
Go back to
10.
the original.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have
Okay,
to pay.
so all those, you have to
All
ask.
those in favor?
Aye.
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 I move that we approve number 10.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Peña, second by Mr. Aguilar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. We go to item number 12, recommend approval to pay Ambiotech Civil Engineering Group, Inc., $3,700, Transportation Parking Lot Phase 2, for a grand total of $3,700 to be paid from Local Maintenance Fund 199. Dr. Saavedra, you have a question for this one.
Well, my main concern is getting everything paid from the Fund 199.
And I think that that's everybody's
that's
concern.
yeah.
And since we don't have the actual numbers for the budget, and let's just clarify things. I think what we did is we saw a lot of the detailed figures on the report that was given to us. And we have a concern since the budget has not really been given to us, the actual figures. But, you know, that's the purpose why we have a couple of
Right,
concerns
right.
as to where the money's coming from. Go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
Mr. Springton, are these
sir.
earmarked programs?
Sir?
Are these earmarked, the funds?
Yes, sir. These projects
So
were
it's in the
earmarked.
budget already?
And the funds were placed there how long ago?
Transportation Department, probably 4 to 5 years ago.
Yes, and then I think we have also discussed, Dr. Saavedra, that we discussed that anything after these phases
Right.
that we have earmarked, that we were not going to continue with, and that's something that I've already talked to Mr. Fuller about. And
And that was my concern because it was coming from the Fund 199.
All these projects have already have, I'm not sure about this one, this is Ambiotech, so they're just doing testing, but they've already have an approved contract that's gone through the RFQ, RFP cycle. It's already been approved by the board. If there's a contractor and we're paying it, it's already been approved by the board. It's already gone through the procurement methods.
I'd like to move to approve.
For the clarification, Mr. Full.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Peña. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Aguilar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. We now go to recommended approval of the following contract agreement. Recommend approval of to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Brownsville Community Service Centers and neighboring schools districts to provide adult basic education, general education development, and English as second language classes for the 2010-2011 school year. Ms. Longoria, you have a question on this item?
Yes, I just want to know if there's any cost to the district.
Ms. Peña?
At this time, I would like Mr. Superintendent Brett Springston, Mrs. Presas Garcia, members of the board. We have recently taken on the adult basics under the auspices of curriculum, and Mrs. Ayala has an updated information. So I'd like for her to present, please.
Thank you.
Superintendent and the other board members. The cost to the district, this is a win-win situation for us because it's at the outreach program. They provide the facilities, they provide the custodial, they provide everything. We provide the staff, but the staff is provided by a grant that we have had in existence for many years in the school district because we are in a co-op. Now, I understand that you have their physical implications, and I have here Mr. Borrego that can explain to you exactly what those physical implications as far as we are concerned. But as far as facilities and anything else, no, ma'am.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Move to approve?
Everybody is,
Yeah, we're
no
okay.
more questions? Motion by Ms. Peña. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Aguilar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. We now go to recommend approval of the following bids, proposal purchases. Recommend awarding RFQ number 11-095 for standby geotechnical and materials testing annual contract to Robert Kisner Consultants, Inc., McAllen, Texas, Terracona Consulting Engineers, FAR, Texas, and Professional Services Industries, Inc., Arlington, Texas, to provide engineering services and the authorized administration to negotiate a fee for said services on a project-by-project basis to be paid from Local Maintenance Fund 199 Qualified School Construction Bond Fund Science Laboratory Grant Program. Ms. Longoria.
Yes, this one I would also like to see, we could suspend till we clarify the situation with the bond issue.
Mr. Ms.
Um,
Garcia?
Go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
Again, Mrs. Springton, these funds come from a grant, science grant, that the district received to do all these projects. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Well, part of it does. The other one's 199 Qualified School Construction Bond Fund.
Madam President, members of the board, if I may, this is simply a request for qualifications, and what we did here is we selected 3 vendors that would provide services for the school district in case that we
And
do
we need
need
it.
them. And depending on where we need those services, then that would be the fund that we would use. If it's we would use 199 or QSCB funds or the science laboratory grant, depending on where the services are needed. And we do this so that we have them on standby, because if we had to wait for, to go out through the whole bidding process, it would take too long for us to get the work done. So we have them on standby, and we have vendor first choice, second choice, and third choice. And if we can't work something out with them, then we go to the next one.
So at this time, we're not going to pay anything. We don't have to pay
This
anything.
time, we don't pay anything until they provide the service.
All right.
We negotiate the service
The
with them,
fee.
we come to you for payment, and then it is approved at that time.
Okay.
And that is the same thing for number
For
19.
number 19?
Yeah, I thought.
All right.
we
For
put
both
the
of them.
two
The same
together.
thing for both of them.
Okay, move to approve 18 and 19.
I have a question, Ms. Peña.
Oh, sorry.
Also, what's the fee that you're approving for them to pay? Is there a certain fee for certain services? What is it, what's the layout?
There's not a set fee, it depends on the.
The work, the
on
service
work
that's
done
needed.
And the
Provided,
extent of
yeah.
the service, yes.
So then when would you find, of course, you're gonna find out at the time that you're gonna need those services wherever the location is at. But are you gonna have a cap amount, or are you just gonna say,
No,
you know.
at that point, we will negotiate with them and get a price. Once we have a price on that, we'll come to the board
Back to the board.
and get approval before we
Well, no.
spend that money.
so for clarification, then you will not approve unless it's presented to the board?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
just clarification, because we just need to make sure that we have we
Move to
follow the
approve 18 and
procedures.
19.
Yes, ma'am.
Second. Oh, go ahead, Ms.
Motion by Ms. Peña, second by Mr. Aguilar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. And also for item number 19,
Yes.
recommend awarding
18 and
RFQ.
19.
Yes.
Yeah, it was 18
We
and
did
19.
both, ma'am.
18 and 19 together.
Okay. Motion carries 6-0. Now we go into personnel matters. And I believe
Back to executive.
we will now step into executive room. It is now 8:50. It is now 8:59. The board will now reconvene.
Move to
Item number
approve.
23, recommend approval to compensate a professional employee. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve 23.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Peña, second by Dr. Saavedra. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. We now go to announcements. Mr. Springston, item number
Our-
26.
Got a curriculum committee meeting coming up Thursday, 5:30.
Weather permitting.
Yes, and I will check on weather and we'll keep the board advised.
Snowflakes permitting.
Yes, ma'am. Then our next board meeting is on February the 15th.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Ms. Peña. Do I have a second? Second by Dr. Saavedra. All those in favor?
Well, you don't really have a favor.
Motion carries 6-0.
Good night, Brownsville.